Hello and welcome once again to Life Lessons 360. My name is Anthony. So good to have you here on the channel. Here at Life Lessons 360, we go ahead to talk about powerful stories filled with wisdom, practical examples, and insights to enable you not just thrive, but excel in every area of your life, be it physically, emotionally, professionally, and more importantly, spiritually. Today, I have a great story to tell, and this story revolves around my experiences back then when I was still in university studying. I had a lot of challenges in school. Really, I had a cycle of failures, a cycle of setbacks. Things weren't exactly the way I thought they would go. I failed so many times. I repeated classes so many times, okay? And over the years, I've learned this principle. Literally, I was in school for almost about 12 years, as against the normal 7 or 8 years if we put every other setback within the institution in the picture. I spent roughly about 12 years in school. Okay, so at a point in time, I had like 4 different classes, 4 different sets, and it's something for you to have come into school. Okay, you see someone in school, you welcome the person in school, but the person graduated long before you did graduate. So you can imagine what I'm talking about. And over the years, while still in school, I learned these lessons. And these lessons were what enabled me to pull through despite the challenges I was going through. The first lesson I learned to celebrate people and not lose myself in the process. Okay. One of the things that envy does and bitterness does is that it blurs your clarity and it stagnates your focus. If you get upset over what happens around you and even within you, you tend to lose clarity. You tend to lose focus. And once you lose clarity and focus, it ends up affecting your productivity at the end of the day. And so I learned to celebrate people by celebrating people. You could read, study with someone, study with a group of people. You're like 6 people in a group. 5 people pass, and you're the one that did not pass. Okay. And it was really it was tumultuous on my mind because I was like, all the effort, everything I put inside, all just down the drain. I have to now prepare for a receipt. Sometimes I had to even repeat a class. So I learned to celebrate people. It was difficult, truly. It was really difficult walking up to someone who you read with. And sometimes the back of your mind tells you, I know I'm better than this person, but this person passed and I failed, that kind of thing. So, but at the end of the day, envy and bitterness really blurs your clarity and stagnates your focus. So I learned to reach out to people and say, hey, congratulations. Wow, you made it. We celebrate together and everything. Truly, it was difficult. But that was the first lesson I learned, learning to celebrate people and not lose myself in the process. The second thing I learned was that my story, my pace. Okay, everybody is unique. I learned not to compare myself with other people's experiences. It was really difficult because I felt, man, I was losing years, I was losing time. I needed to make progress. Okay, and I almost thought that everything I was going through, there was no point, there was no value in it until a certain day. One of those days in our institution, in our medical fellowship, then there was an outcry because a lot of people failed exams, and that failure wasn't just a failure that would lead them to resit an exam. They actually failed and they had to repeat an entire year. And I was called by the academic secretary then, and he told me he would like me to take a go at these people. And I'm like, take a go? How? Like, what am I going to tell them? My story. I've been through a whole lot. What am I going to tell them, And he told them, he made a statement. He said, for him, he's academic secretary. By office, he's academic secretary. His job, at least as an academic secretary, is to go and talk to these people, encourage them, tell them that, say a thing or two to motivate them and all that. But he told me that he may have the office, but he doesn't have the experience. And when he said that, I learned a very important lesson. I learned that the experiences you go through in life can become a tool enabling you to access the lives of people. And when you can access the lives of people, only then can you turn on the light for them to have a sense of peace and encouragement. If you're not within their life or ecosystem, you really cannot do anything. And when I went into that meeting, I was able to, they welcome me because they saw, oh, this person has been through what I've been through. And something about success, it takes someone who has navigated some certain terrains to be able to bring someone out of that darkness into the light. If you've never been through something, it's difficult for you to tell another person what to do. It's almost as if you're just speaking from your head and not from your heart. But I learned a great lesson that the experiences I had been through were of great value because it became a tool in my hands. The third thing I learned was that I learned to use comparison as a learning tool. I learned to use comparison to learn, okay? So rather than have comparison with resentment, I learned to use comparison to learn. What do I mean? Like, after all I've been through, I started asking myself introspective questions like, okay, Tony, why did you go through this thing? Why did you fail at this thing? Is there anything you could have done better? Okay? Is there any way you would have approached this particular situation? It made me go down thinking, okay? And so what I did, I gathered past question papers for 10 years. You know, it was like crazy. 10 years of question papers in different subjects. And I sat down and I started answering all the questions for 10 years, okay? And by the time I answered all the questions for 10 years, I had a compendium of answers for 10 years. Now, by the time I was done with that, my mini project, okay, it did something to my mind. I had a mind shift, massive mind shift. I began to see things differently. I began to understand, okay, this is what is required of you. I began to understand how to answer questions strategically. I began to understand how your lecturers think and what they will require of you. And it was so amazing because by the time I sat for the next exam on those subjects, it was a blast. I had no issue whatsoever with the exams. I just had a blast, run through, success, boom, you know, great outing. But that's not even the testimony of the story. One of those days I came back because I had handed over the compendium to the academic unit of our fellowship. And one of those days I came back and I saw somebody, you know, studying with the manual. Like the person had made a copy for themselves and they were studying with it. And I'm like, wow, that's my work right there, you know. And I was so proud of myself because out of the ashes of pain, something that not only lit my life, but lit the future and the generations that followed, because that project kept going down. Each class that came in through that, you know, each class that came in used that same material for preparation for the exams, and it was a blast for them. So I learned, okay, rather than compare with resentment, I had to learn to compare with curiosity. The fourth thing that I learned over the years was I needed to guard my emotional energy. Really, emotions are a powerful thing. And when you find yourself frustrated because of, you know, setbacks, you really can't do much, okay? You really can't do much. And so I learned how to guard my emotions. I learned rather than get angry and bitter, I learned to practice gratitude. It's something you practice. It's not something that comes like, oh, go ahead, you know. I learned to get up from frustration and anger and look for a friend of mine who succeeded. And like, wow, you succeeded. Wow, great news, You know, and even when they were trying to be nice about it, like not really showing their excitement because they felt if they did, I would feel bad. No. I learned not to feel bad. You know, when you're celebrating people, you just learn to go beyond yourself. I learned how to just jump, shout, wow, you made it, we celebrate together. And that helped me a lot because when I started practicing gratitude, I started experiencing a different form of inner peace. And if there's something you need to succeed or move forward in life, is inner peace. Without inner peace, there's so much turmoil going on. And it's enriched me greatly because it enabled me to be more productive and more proficient, okay? Another thing I learned to do, which is closely related, is that I learned to keep pressing forward. I learned to keep pressing forward. Despite everything, sometimes even with all you know, even with everything that you've learned from the previous lessons, you still have setbacks. And someone rightly said that setbacks don't define you. What actually defines you is persistence. You persist at something until you nail the mark. You don't give up on yourself. You keep trying, you keep hitting harder, you keep hammering that thing until you come through, until you break through. The important thing is that sometimes as you persist, when I learned persistence back in school, I kept, you fall now, you get up. It's not how many times you fall that really matters. It's can you rise up when you fall? And that built in me a certain level of resilience that I not only used when I was in university, but even in life generally, because I found that life will hit you in certain places, but it's not about falling, it's about rising up again. And the final thing I learned when I was back in school is how to build momentum positively or build momentum with positivity. One of the things I learned is that for you to succeed at anything you do, you have to change your vocabulary. It's so important. You change your language, you change your vocabulary. What do I mean? For instance, rather than say, then back in school, I always say, I have a problem, I have a problem, I have a problem. I'm like, this problem thing was beginning to affect the circuits in my brain, So I had to learn to create some reframing patterns. Like rather than say, I have a problem, I'll find myself saying, I have a challenge. And each time I use the word, I had a challenge, I found out that my brain operated better. Like it's as if I said I had a problem, my brain shuts down. If I say I have a challenge, my brain is awake. Okay, how do we solve it? How do we do this? And I learned to change my vocabulary on a lot of counts. And all these things enabled me, to see things differently. I learned to detach myself from negative people. Sometimes some people just are so negative, they are just, all they talk about is down. They never really see things like this from an elevated standpoint. They always see things from a depressed standpoint. And if you surround yourself with negative people and they keep spilling out negativity, consciously or unconsciously, you start absorbing the negativity around them. So I had to build a system for myself whereby I changed my vocabulary. I surrounded myself with positive people. I looked up things that were positive. I started seeing myself succeeding rather than seeing myself, going through the process all over again. And so these are the lessons I learned, all through my years in university, all through the years of pain, frustration, setbacks. Believe me, it's not easy. It really could be difficult. When you watch people, you started a race with people and you find that those people are moving ahead of you, way ahead of you, and you're still in the same spot, going through cycles. I started school with a certain group of people, and 2-3 years down the line, they had served as doctors, they had done, I was still in school. At the point in time, it was that bad. Sometimes it was so bad that people would rush. Rather than look at their result, they're like, okay, let us look at if this guy, if Tony passed or if Tony failed, that kind of thing. So it was emotionally demanding for me. It was traumatic. But at the end of the day, one of the things I've learned is there could always be glory from ashes. There could always be glory from ashes. No matter what you may be going through, there is a strength within you. God is able to lift you up. You are able to talk to yourself, speak life into yourself, tell yourself, come on, in spite of what I'm going through, I would forge ahead. I would celebrate people. I would understand that my story is unique to me. I would understand that rather than compare with resentment, I would compare with curiosity. I will learn to guard my emotions properly. I will learn how to press forward. And more importantly, I will learn to build momentum with positivity. God bless you.